and I have a play that you all know by heart. On the other hand, I have a play that no one has ever read. So I can't assume familiarity on one, and the other one, you're going to say, what can you tell me new about Hamlet? And there's another problem that's intrinsic with the task you've given me. And that is that, how do I talk about 4 plays in 2 lectures? I could spend 4 hours on Hamlet, just reading it with you and talking about it, and it would be a pleasure. So I almost gave myself a headache trying to think how to approach it, and I decided not to approach it in a traditional way. And then I sat down to do what I had never done before, which is to read the other play. And I went to work, and I took out my complete Shakespeare. This is my working Shakespeare, okay? You can tell by all the stuff in it. This is the one I keep at home for display, and I don't write in it. And so I opened it up, and I said, no, I'm doing Hamlet, and what's that other play? It's two, and I thought, well, it's got to be Two Gentlemen of Verona. So I sat in my room one Sunday afternoon and read a play which I hate. Then I went home and I said, was it the Two Gentlemen of Verona? And I looked, and it was the Two Noble Kinsmen, which is even worse than the Two Gentlemen of Verona. So I was really trapped there. And the reason I was misled was that when I went into my office, the complete Pelican Shakespeare, which is my working text that I use when I teach, doesn't have the Two Noble Kinsmen. And it doesn't have the Two Noble Kinsmen because the editors didn't feel it was enough Shakespeare to deserve presence. The Riverside Shakespeare does have the Two Noble Kinsmen, so I was able to find it in my library and read it. And I did. What really pleased me was that I had already decided that I wanted to take a particular slant with Hamlet. And lo and behold, the perfect introduction to that, and I don't even know yet how much Hamlet I'll be able to do with you, is the Two Noble Kinsmen. Because I decided that to try something different, I would pretty much ignore Hamlet. And that what I wanted to do, since you are all women, was to focus on, first I thought the women, and then I thought, no, I want to talk about Ophelia, which I've not done with you, and I have done Hamlet in previous years. But I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to kind of explore Ophelia's relationship with Hamlet and her descent and disintegration, the cruelty he wreaks on her and her insanity and death. And I thought if I did that, we could read thoroughly those scenes and have a sense of totality without trying to say, let's cover every base in the baseball field here. We'll just take Ophelia. Well, lo and behold, when you read the Two Noble Kinsmen, it turns out that there is a young girl in Two Noble Kinsmen, the jailer's daughter, who falls in love, is not responded to by the person she loves, and who goes crazy. Isn't that interesting? So I thought God was telling me to read the right play, and he'll help me out with the lecture. And I'm going to try to do that. I think it might mean that we spend more time on Two Noble Kinsmen than on Hamlet, and certainly if you all know Hamlet, that's okay. I hope not to ignore Ophelia, though, because poetry is wonderful in those scenes. And that made me think that what I would like to do, it gave me a key to enter the 4 plays, because next time I come back, we'll be doing Much Ado and The Tempest, and all 4 of these plays are about love and falling in love. And we get Benedict and Beatrice, the classic Spencer Tracy and Hepburn, conflict. And in The Tempest, we have seeing another person and falling in love. So it seems to me that we've got a way of looking at these plays which makes it unnecessary for us to go through the whole process, and still they might illuminate each other when you go see the plays in Ashland, if you'd like. So let's start with how many of you have read the Two Noble Kinsmen? Anybody can? I have never. One person, no, just scratching your head. Yeah, no, I have never met anybody, and I have been teaching Shakespeare for almost 30 years, and I never forced myself to do it either. So that was a first read for me. It's not written entirely by Shakespeare. It's written by John Fletcher and Shakespeare, and Fletcher is the Fletcher of Beaumont and Fletcher, who were a writing team in his day who were very famous. Not as famous as Shakespeare, but still are written about and read. The part of the play that I want to look at seems, according to what scholars think, to be written primarily by Fletcher. So even though this is a Shakespeare session, Fletcher probably wrote most of this. He had a reputation of taking Shakespeare's ideas and using them in his own plays. So it might not be surprising that he, being familiar with Ophelia, would create an Ophelia-like character, if that makes any sense. It was even more interesting to start off with this because I had forgotten, if I ever knew, that the play is a direct steal from The Knight's Tale by Geoffrey Chaucer. And that is particularly interesting. The story itself is fairly simple. It takes place in the court of Theseus and Hippolyta, who are getting married, reminiscent of Midsummer Night's Dream, which is about the marriage of Theseus and Hippolyta in Athens. And 3 mourning queens stop the wedding. In Chaucer, it's 3 noble women, including some queens and duchesses. And they say, Creon has defeated our husbands and piled their bodies high, and he will not allow us to bury them, and we need revenge. So Theseus goes to Creon and defeats him in battle. And in the battle, he captures 2 young cousins named Arcite and Palamon and puts them in jail. They're noble Thebans. And they are the ultimate friends. While they are in jail, happy to be there together, one of them looks out a window and sees a gorgeous woman who is the sister of Hippolyta, the queen of the Amazons. And he falls in love. And he says, look out the window and see that gorgeous woman, Emily or Amelia. And Arcite falls in love. And so they have a fight immediately. And they hate each other's guts because, as Chaucer has him say, I saw her first. And Amelia, by the way, has nothing to say with this. I mean, this is love from a distance. As the story goes on, Arcite is expelled, sent into an outcast. Palamon breaks loose from jail. Arcite comes back in disguise. They meet, they fight. The fight is stopped. They are forced to have a major confrontation at the end, and the winner gets Emily, and the loser gets executed. And Arcite defeats Palamon, and just as he goes off to enjoy his victory, his horse throws him off, stomps on his head, and he's killed. And Palamon gets her. And that's the story from The Knight's Tale. It's a curious story, a quaint and curious story. Chaucer, I did myself probably a misdeed here because having read this, I immediately opened up Chaucer and discovered, as you might imagine, how much more wonderful this is by Chaucer than it is by Shakespeare and Fletcher. But he comes right out and he says, "I loved her first, and told they me woe." I loved her first, and I told you how sad I was. And the two have their fight. In the play, there is a subplot which does not appear in Chaucer, and it's a story of the daughter of the jailer. And she's not even given a name. She's called the jailer's daughter, who is being wooed by a wooer who also doesn't have a name. He's arranging her marriage with her father, the jailer. She sees Palamon and falls in love with him. We're talking immediate love. And Palamon, of course, has eyes only for Amelia, and she pines away. Meanwhile, her father, discovering her incipient insanity, talks to the wooer, and they try to find a way to bring her back to sanity. And Palamon will never love her, and so they do something. They have an interesting psychological ploy. So once she goes crazy, they tell the lover to dress up like Palamon and to feed her insanity, to tell her that he is Palamon, and which is what he does. And the doctor says, whatever she wants, you agree with. In fact, go to bed with her. And in the story, the wooer, who she doesn't love, goes to bed with her and heals her of her insanity, which is every teenage boy's dream of helping the girl that he loves. It's a morally dubious plot, if you ask me. Nonetheless, it's fascinating to see this evolving in the story, thinking about Chaucer, and when I was reading it, I was thinking about Ophelia, and I think the comparison raises a really interesting issue. What is the nature of love? What are the fictions of love, and what is the nature of real engagement. Last week, we finished, for me, something I've never done before, which is a quick study of Hamlet by using the Mel Gibson version, and I would stop the tape and make them look at the great speeches, which irritated them. They wanted me to let them watch it. And I said, if you want to watch it, you can check it out. We're going to study a few of these speeches. But I knew I couldn't do Hamlet in less than a month if I read it, whereas with the movie, I could do it in a week and 2 days, which I did. I was very much impressed in that movie with the way the actress in the film deals with the true insanity of Ophelia. I mean, it's a compelling, powerful version. And it's hard to imagine anyone else other than she playing that role. And I, having read the play as we were doing it, which my students probably were not doing, I was really impressed with the fragility of this woman's psyche, who has given herself in love to a man she adores, really, who turns on her and destroys her. And boy, when he says to her, I love thee not, you imagine what goes on, because I think, without a doubt, reading the play and watching the movie, she slept with him. And when she comes back with those songs, that imply that this has happened, you can see how an innocent person who's truly in love might be abused. And the oddity is that these two women are so different, because the jailer's daughter has no relationship whatsoever with the man that she loves, just as Palamon and Arcite have no relationship with Amelia. They just love her. And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to read the poetry and see how this is articulated, the kinds of love that can happen. And then next time when we come back, we can play around with the kind of love which is the I hate you so much because I love you that Benedict and Beatrice have. And then the love at first sight that we see with Miranda, right? When she wakes up and sees Ferdinand there in the brave new world that has such creatures in it. The whole idea, there are a couple of myths going on here, and then there's some truths going on as well. I want to start. So as I gather, I'm going to have to do some reading, right? Because you're not... Okay, if you don't mind, I will read. I like to read anyway. It takes up a lot of time, and I get paid for it. So let me start with just a speech here to show you something interesting. Assume that you sat down and you had not read Hamlet for a while, and this speech is read to you. Where would it come from? Then she talked of you, sir, that you must lose your head tomorrow morning, and she must gather flowers to bury you, and see the house made handsome. Then she sung nothing but willow, 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 and between ever was Palamon, fair Palamon, and Palamon was a tall young man. The place was knee-deep where she sat, her careless tresses a wreath of bulrush rounded. About her stuck 1,000 fresh water flowers of several colors, that methought she appeared like the fair nymph that feeds the lake with waters, or as iris newly dropped down from heaven. Rings she made of rushes that grew by, and to 'em spoke the prettiest posies. Thus our true love's tied. This you may loose, not me. And many a one, and then she wept, and sung again, and sighed, and with the same breath smiled, and kissed her hand. Who is it? Of course it is. I mean, it's amazing. You read that speech and you say, I don't remember that speech, but it does sound like it. We'll come back to this later on. It's hard not to want to talk about that, as you can imagine, to hear in this play, in the complete works of Shakespeare, odors, resonances of the water death of Ophelia. So let's play around with the jailer's daughter for a while. And this is the subplot. Okay, so today we're not dealing with the main plot of either story. We're dealing with the subplot, Ophelia and Hamlet, and the subplot of the jailer's daughter. And so I'm going to start with her description here, Act 2, Scene 1. So if you have a copy of the play, any of you have copies of Two Noble Kinsmen? I think it's not very available. Okay, I'll mention it anyway. So the daughter comes in, Act 2, Scene 1. The jailer is talking with the wooer, And he says, I may depart with little while I live, something I may cast to you, not much. Alas, the prison I keep, though it be for great ones, yet they seldom come. Before one salmon you shall take a number of minnows. That's a nice one. So being a jailer, he gets money from his prisoners. And he says to the wooer, when I get enough money, I will be glad to pass it on to you in a dowry with my daughter, but you don't very often get wealthy men in a prison. The wooer says, Sir, I demand no more than your own offer, and I will estate your daughter in what I have promised. What we get at the beginning is that this is a kind of traditional, acceptable relationship. The wooer is not an evil man, though he does what I consider a very shocking thing at the end. And in comes the daughter with strewings. You know what strewings are? She's coming in with like rushes that she would put on the floor, so you strew them. And of course, right away you think of Ophelia coming in with her flowers and the things that she carries. So the very first image of her is the woman coming in with strewings. Here she comes. The jailer says, as soon as the court hurry is over, we will have an end of it. In the meantime, look tenderly to the two prisoners. I can tell you they are princes. The daughter comes in for the first time. These strewings are for their chamber. 'Tis pity they are in prison, and 'twere pity they should be out. I do think they have patience to make any adversity ashamed. The prison itself is proud of them. They have all the world in their chamber. Of course, she's not unhappy that they're in prison. Why? She gets to see them. And she's saying, her first response is, they are remarkable young men, truly remarkable. The jailer says, they are famed to be a pair of absolute men. Daughter says, by my troth, I think fame but stammers them. They stand a step above the reach of report. This is that sort of like Gonrell saying, the difference between men and men, right? I mean, some men are, and these two men are fabulous. They're beautiful. Jailer says, I heard them reported in the battle to be the only doers. Daughter, nay, most likely, for they are noble sufferers. I marvel how they would have looked had they been victors, that with such a constant nobility enforce a freedom out of bondage, making misery their mirth and affliction a toy to jest at. Well, this comes right after the gentlemen say how wonderfully faithful they are going to be to each other, and before they see Amelia. Okay? So these people they're blood brothers, if that makes any sense. They've decided they are happy. They say in the play, we will stay here until we die, as long as our friendship is here. Then it takes one woman walking in the garden to turn them into butting heads. The daughter says, it seems to me they have no more sense of their captivity than I of ruling Athens. They eat well, look merrily, discourse of many things, but nothing of their own restraint and disasters. Yet sometimes a divided sigh, martyred as it were in the deliverance, will break from one of them, when the other presently gives it so sweet a rebuke that I could wish myself a sigh to be so chid, or at least a sire to be so comforted. What's attractive about these guys? Why would they be, say, food for falling in love with? Anybody see anything in them? She says, if I could be a sire to be rebuked like that. I think she's responding to this incredible brotherhood quality that you see when you watch two people who love each other and have a kind of equality between them. They are happy, and then once in a while a sigh, and the other one says, no unhappiness, as long as we have each other. Let's take a look at how this evolves. Act 2, Scene 2. Act 1, Scene 4. Oops, wrong one. Act 2, Scene 4. She comes in alone, and we have a soliloquy. Now, we've had her initial response, and now watch what happens slowly. Why should I love this gentleman? 'Tis odds he never will affect me. I am base. My father, the mean keeper of his prison, and he a prince. To marry him is hopeless. To be his whore is witless. Out upon it! What pushes are we wenches driven to when 15 once has found us? Oh, what's the trouble? She knows she can't marry him. She's just the daughter of a jailer, and these are princes. There's no. But what happens? All of a sudden you reach 15, and then what do? You start feeling these needs, and love raises its head. I see it teaching in a high school. They feel obligated to fall in love when they're 15. If you just say, wait a few years, when you're 30, think about it. It doesn't mean anything to them. So this is her problem. First, I saw him. I, seeing, thought he was a goodly man. He has as much to please a woman in him, if he pleased to bestow it so, as ever these eyes yet looked upon. Next, I pitied him, and so would any young wench of my conscience that ever dreamed or vowed her maidenhead to a young handsome man. Then I loved him. I saw him, I pitied him, I loved him. Does that remind you of anybody? Yes, that's true. I wasn't thinking of that. I meant Shakespeare. Who pitied because of, she saw me, she pitied me because of the adversities that I was? Othello, yeah. And I hear strong echoes. And by the way, in the speech I read at the beginning where she sings, Willow, 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 who sings Willow, Willow, Willow? Desdemona, yes. So actually I'm connecting us to Ophelia, but there is some interesting stuff going on here. I saw him, I pitied him, then I loved him, extremely loved him, infinitely loved him. And yet he had a cousin, fair as he too, but in my heart was Palamon. And there, Lord, what a coil he keeps. To hear him sing in an evening, what a heaven it is. And yet his songs are sad ones. Fairer spoken was never gentleman. When I come in to bring him water in the morning, first he bows his noble body, then salutes me thus. Fair gentle maid, good morrow. May thy goodness give thee a happy husband. Once he kissed me. I loved my lips the better 10 days after. Would he do so every day? He gives much, and me as much, to see his misery. What should I do to make him know I love him? For I would fain enjoy him. Say I ventured to set him free. What says the law then? Thus much for law and kindred. Her father, the jailer, will be executed if he's freed. I will do it, and this night or tomorrow he shall love me. Interesting. Does anybody see anything in the way she's falling in love? What kind of a love is it? It's infatuation, yeah, isn't it? I mean, this is a 15-year-old girl falling in love with a senior, right? And he never sees me. He doesn't know I exist. She has this capacity to be there bringing him food. And when she brings the food, what does he say to her? He says, fair, gentle maid, good morrow. Well, that's just about as, as romantic a come on as a gentleman. All it means is good morning. But she's made this into, and once in gratitude, what did he do? He kissed her. And for 2 weeks, on those lips. Marvelous, yeah. She decides to free him, and she does free him. Okay, now let's watch the evolution of this woman's experiences. Act 2, scene 6. She frees him. The daughter comes in. Let all the dukes and all the devils roar. He is at liberty. She does free him. Her father is sentenced to death because of this, by the way. He doesn't die, but it's very dangerous. I have ventured for him, and out I have brought him to a little wood a mile hence. All right? She's taken him out. She's going to have to get a file to remove his chains. But she's made a heroic act. I was thinking of the prime of Miss Jean Brodie and the influence she has on the young girls, remember? And the one girl who actually goes and dies in Spain on the wrong side because she's emulating. And this girl here is going to do anything to get the attention of Palamon. Palamon, who is totally infatuated with Amelia. I have sent him where a cedar, higher than all the rest, spreads like a plain fast by a brook, and there he shall keep close till I provide him files and food, for yet his iron bracelets are not off. Oh, love, what a stout-hearted child thou art. My father durst better have endured cold iron than done it. I love him beyond love and beyond reason, or wit, or safety. I have made him know it. I care not. I am desperate. Well, I love beyond reason, beyond wit, or safety. This is classic, isn't it? Remember, in Shakespeare, love is either going to cause tragedy or comedy. It hardly ever causes marriage, children, grandchildren, and happiness, right? I mean, love is a really dangerous emotion. And this is infatuation. We're going to see how different she is from Ophelia if we get a chance to look over in the other play. If the law find me and then condemn me for it, some wenches, some honest-hearted maids will sing my dirge, and tell to my memory my death was noble, dying almost a martyr. I don't know what it's going to look like when you go to Ashland, but I hope this is played by a girl around 15. Because can you see yourself watching a child falling in love and being willing to sacrifice? She'll go down a martyr in memory. That way he takes, I purpose, is my way too. Sure, he cannot be so unmanly as to leave me here. If he do, maids will not so easily trust men again. And yet, he has not thanked me for what I have done. No, not so much as kissed me. And that, methinks, is not so well. Nor scarcely could I persuade him to become a free man. He made such scruples of the wrong he did to me and to my father. What's happened at exactly that moment? The first thought that maybe that senior doesn't love me or even see me, right? Or even know that I exist. He didn't even want to leave when I said, I'll make you free. I'll take you out. He had scruples. And I see this all the time. I mean, kids fall in love and fall out of love. It's the classic high school adolescent world. And then there's often that moment when you realize that you don't really exist. And see what happens of it. Yet I hope when he considers more, this love of mine will take more root with him. Let him do what he will with me, so he use me kindly. For use me so he shall. Or I'll proclaim him, and to his face no man. I'll presently provide him necessaries and pack my clothes up. And where there is a path of ground, I'll venture, so he be with me. By him, like a shadow, I'll ever dwell. Within this hour, the hubbub, we would say hubbub, the hubbub will be all o'er the prison. I am then kissing the man they look for. Well, some people build immediate fantasies, right? And she imagines the hubbub that's going to take place. And as they run, I will go anywhere, and I will be kissing him. I think a young girl could make this really an enjoyable speech. Is this, do you like the poetry? Is it coming across? It really does seem to work, doesn't it? I'm kind of surprised myself. Let's watch the disintegration of the jailer's daughter. Act 3, Scene 2, if you have it. She leaves him, goes back to get a file to cut the chains off, comes and he's not there. He has mistook the brake, the shrubbery he was supposed to hide in. He's gone after his fancy. 'Tis now well nigh morning. No matter. Would it were perpetual night and darkness, Lord of the world. What's happened? Total disaster, right? Oh, he's not here. Hark, 'tis a wolf. In me hath grief slain fear, and but for one thing I care for nothing, and that's Palamon. I reek not if the wolves would jaw me. So he had this file. I want to sacrifice myself. If I could give him the file, the wolves could eat me up, right? That'd be all right. What if I helloed for him? I cannot hello. If I whooped, what then? If he not answered, I should call a wolf, and do him but that service. I have heard strange howls this livelong night. Why may it not be that they may have made prey of him? He has no weapons. He cannot run. The jingling of his gyves might call fell things to listen who have in them a sense to know a man unarmed and can smell where resistance is. I'll set it down. He's torn to pieces. This is sort of me like my daughter doesn't call, like we told her, call, let us know after the tolo where you're going, so we don't, so she doesn't call till 2:30. And of course, by then, what do we know for a fact? She's been in a car accident, she's in the hospital, we're calling the ambulances, and, that kind of immediate leap to outer, she knows, Palamon, he's been torn to pieces by wolves. They howled many together, and then they fed on him. So just let me think about this and let me imagine it. So much for that. Be bold to ring the bell. Right? I'm going to call him. How stand I then? All's charred when he is gone. No, I lie. My father is to be hanged for his escape, myself to beg, if I prize so much as to deny my act. But that I would not, should I try death by dozens. I am moped. Food took I none these 2 days. Sip some water. I have not closed mine eyes, save when my lids scoured off their brine. Alas, dissolve my life. Let not my sense unsettle, lest I should drown, or stab, or hang myself. O state of nature, fail together in me, since thy best props are warped. Which way now? The best way is the next way to a grave. Each arid step beside is torment. Lo, the moon is down. The crickets chirp. The screech owl calls in the dawn. All offices are done, save what I fail in. But the point is this: an end. That is all. I have a feeling this could be a really good play, especially these parts. I really enjoy her character. But it's so unreal, isn't it? In one speech, this is a soliloquy, we go from he's not here to I might as well kill myself, right? I especially like the line, the moon is down, the crickets chirp, the screech owl calls in the dawn. All offices are done, save what I fail. I haven't done my job. Everything else has come to a close. All right. Do you like this? I mean, is this interesting to you? Let's pursue her a little bit more into insanity then. Because if you hated it, I could just stop and go to Hamlet and we could read. But this is such unusual stuff. Act 3, Scene 5. Make sure I'm in the right spot here. Act 3, Scene 5. The jailer's daughter comes in. What's happened is that there's a group of rustics in the manner of Midsummer Night's Dream who are going to put on a play for Theseus and Hippolyta. They are putting a mummers play on, so dressed up like mummers. You remember from the old parades in Philadelphia? And this goes way back. And there's a problem. These rustics are missing one woman who hasn't shown up. And as they're talking in sort of rustic way, in comes the jailer's daughter. The countryman says, let's get ready for the play. And she comes in singing. And Shakespeare, when he has people crazy, often uses songs to try to get into their mood, as you know. She comes in singing, "The George Allo came from the south, from the coast of Barbary, and there he met with brave gallants of war, by one, by two, by three, Well hailed, you jolly gallants, and whither now are you bound? Oh, let me have your company till I come to the sound. There was 3 fools fell out about an owlet. The one said it was an owl, the other he said nay, the third he said it was an hawk, and her bells were cut away." The third countryman in this scene says, "There's a dainty mad woman, master, comes in the nick, as mad as a March hare." Cliches, right? "If we can get her dance, we are made again. I warrant her, she'll do the rarest gambols." Curious, she comes in, and they only see her in the context of how they might use her in their play, right? They don't say, "Oh, this poor woman," or anything. She's as mad as a March hare. Oh, drag her in. The first countryman says, "A mad woman? We are made, boys." And the schoolmaster, who is the director, says, Are you mad, good woman? The daughter says, I would be sorry else. Give me your hand. Why? I can tell your fortune. You are a fool. Tell 10. I opposed him. Zzz. Friend, you must eat no white bread. If you do, your teeth will bleed extremely. Shall we dance? Oh, I know you. You are a tinker. Sirrah, tinker, stop no more holes but what you should. All of a sudden, what enters? Double entendres, right? Remember when Ophelia starts, as the madder she gets, the more sexually implicit her comments are. And all of a sudden, and this reminds me very much of Ophelia walking up to the king, and saying, and the same kind of dialogue, crazy. I really like this line about don't eat white bread, your teeth will bleed extremely. I don't know, is that true? It worried me when I read it. But when a line like, Sir, you are a tinker, stop no more holes but what you should, all of a sudden we're in that kind of mad sexuality that Shakespeare plays with. The schoolmaster says, Di bono, good Lord, a tinker, damsel? She says, or a conjurer. Raise me a devil now, and let him play qui passa on the bells and the bones. The schoolmaster says, go take her, fluently persuade her to a peace, quiet her down. Strike up, lead her in. Come on, lass, let's trip. She says, I'll lead, do, persuasively, cunningly. And their horns. Away, boys, I hear the horns. She's beginning to thoroughly disintegrate, and we move on now to Act 4, Scene 1. And from that little scene, reminiscent of Ophelia, we have her moving away from them and into her death. In Act 4, Scene 1, we have the scene that I was reading with you at the beginning. Let's go back and pick it up. The wooer says something's seriously wrong with her. And I'm trying to find a good spot to begin with you. Okay. If you don't have the book anyway, right? So it's making a difference. What's wrong with the daughter? How does she look? And the wooer says, was she in health? When did she sleep? The jailer friend says, these are strange questions. And the jailer says, her father now, I do not think she was very well. For now you make me mind her, but this very day I asked her questions, and she answered me so far from what she was, so childishly, so sillily, as if she were a fool and innocent, and I was very angry. But what of it, sir? Nothing but my pity, but you must know it, and as good by me as by another that less loves her. Someone should tell you that your daughter is not well. Well, sir? Not right? Not well? No, sir, not well. 'Tis too true. She is mad. It cannot be. I believe you'll find it so. And the father says, I half suspected what you told me. The gods comfort her. Either this was her love to Palamon or fear of my miscarrying on his escape, or both. The wooer says, 'tis likely. Why all this haste, sir? And the wooer says, I'll tell you quickly. As I was late angling in the great lake that lies behind the palace, from the far shore, thick set with reeds and sedges, as patiently I was attending sport, I heard a voice, a shrill one, and attentive I gave it my ear, when I might well perceive 'twas one that sung, and by the smallness of it, a boy or woman. I then left my angle to his own skill. I came near, but yet perceived not who made the sound. The rushes and the reeds had so encompassed it. I laid me down and listened to the words she sung. For then, through a small glade cut by the fisherman, I saw it was your daughter. Isn't that, Ophelia? To the T. He hears her singing these strange. The jailer says, go on, sir. She sung much, but no sense. Only I heard her repeat this often. Palamon is gone to the wood to gather mulberries. I'll find him out tomorrow. His shackles will betray him. He'll be taken. And what shall I do then? Remember, she thinks he's still wearing his chains. I'll bring a bevy, 100 black-eyed maids that love as I do, with chaplets on their heads of daffodillies, with cherry lips and cheeks of damask roses, and all will dance an antic for the Duke and beg his pardon. Then she talked of you, her father, and that you must lose your head tomorrow morning, and she must gather flowers to bury you, and see the house made handsome. And then you're thinking about Polonius dying, and this girl's worried about her father dying and being buried, right? It's a pity they had to put him in the grave. Then the song, nothing but willow, willow, willow. And between and ever was Palamon, Palamon. And Palamon was a tall young man. The place was knee-deep where she sat. Her careless tresses, a wreath of bulrush rounded. About her stuck 1,000 fresh water flowers of several colors, that methought she appeared like the fair nymph that feeds the lake with waters, or as Iris newly dropped down from heaven. Rings she made of rushes that grow by, and to 'em spoke the prettiest posies. Thus our true love's tied, this you may lose, not me. And many a one, and then she wept and sung again and sighed, and with the same breath smiled and kissed her hand. I made into her. She saw me, and straight sought the flood. What's going to happen? Ready for her death? I saved her. I mean, anyone who's watched Hamlet, and it's already a famous play, and this is written about 13 years after Hamlet, said, oh my goodness, another innocent young woman drowns, but not here. I saved her and set her safe to land, when presently she slipped away, and to the city made with such a cry and swiftness that, believe me, she left me far behind her. 3 or 4 I saw from far off cross her. One of them I knew to be your brother, where she stayed and fell, scarce to be got away. I left them with her, and hither came to tell you. So we go off to that, and it's very beautiful, and I think the poetry actually is very understandable, don't you? I mean, it's not complicated poetry at all, but it's very nicely done. Probably written by Fletcher rather than Shakespeare. Okay, so what do we have as we come to the end? Act 4, Scene 2, and we'll see what happens here. Act 4, Scene 2. Here she comes now. She is not dead. Make sure I'm in the right spot. Oh, I made a mistake. Okay. It's Act 4, Scene 3. Yes. Enter the jailer, the wooer, and the doctor. And we'll see how this has evolved. I'll try to do it fairly quickly. Her distraction, the doctor says, is more at some time of the moon than at other some, is it not? The jailer says she is continually in a harmless distemper, sleeps little, altogether without appetite, save often drinking, dreaming of another world and a better. And what broken piece of matter soe'er she's about, the name Palamon lards to it. That she farces every business withal, fits it to every question. So in her insanity, she's got one thing. Palamon, I love him. Enter the doctor. Look where she comes, the daughter. Look where she comes. Daughter starts. I have forgotten it quite. The burden on it, the song, was Downa, Downa, and penned by no worse man than Geraldo, Emilia's schoolmaster. He's as fantastical, too, as ever he may go upon's legs. For in the next world will Dido see Palamon, and then will she be out of love with Aeneas. This confirms that everything she thinks about ends up dealing with Palamon. What stuff's here, poor soul? Now, for this charm that I told you of, she says, you must bring a piece of silver on the tip of your tongue, or no fairy. Then, if it be your chance to come where the blessed spirits, as there's a sight now, We maids that have our livers perished, cracked to pieces with love, we shall come there and do nothing all day long but pick flowers with Proserpine. Then I will make Palamon a nosegay. Then let him mark me. Then, right, so she now thinks about crossing the river Styx, right, with her piece of silver and getting there. And who's down there? Proserpine, queen of hell. And as soon as she moves in that direction, she thinks, I'll pick flowers with Proserpine. Proserpine was picking flowers when she was stolen away by Pluto, remember? And I will give them to Palamon. The doctor says, how prettily is she amiss. Note her a little further. Daughter says, Faith, I'll tell you. Sometime we go to barley break, we of the blessed. Alas, 'tis a sore life they have in the other place. Such burning, frying, boiling, hissing, howling, chattering, cursing. Oh, they have a shrewd measure. Take heed. If one be mad, or hang, or drown themselves, thither they go. Where do they go? They go to hell, don't they? And there shall we be put in a cauldron of lead and usurer's grease, amongst a whole million of cut purses, and there boil like a gammon of bacon, and that will never be enough. Her brain is really slipping off. Lords and courtiers that have got maids with child, they are in this place. Now you see us slipping into that. Right? What happens to people who get girls pregnant? They go to hell. They shall stand in fire up to the navel, and in ice up to the heart. And there the offending part burns, and the heart freezes. In troth, a very grievous punishment, as one would think for such a trifle. Believe me, one would marry a leprous witch to be rid of it. I'll assure you. To hear there a proud lady and a proud city wife howl together, I were a beast, and I'd call it good sport. One cries, oh, this smoke. The other, this fire. One cries, oh, that ever I did it behind the arras. And then howls. The other curses a suing fellow and her garden house. I will be true, my stars, my fate. Sing the song. She has gone off into Ophelia's imagery of what happens when you commit adultery, right? And she imagines all these women of substance down in hell. One of them saying, oh, I regret I did it behind the arras. Reminding you of what? Yeah, Polonius behind me. But she's not talking about murder. She's talking about hiding with her lover behind the arras. Another of these women says she curses her fellow and her garden house. So where did she meet her lover? Right. So just like Ophelia, she's and like Hamlet, she's expanding her own idealism and turning it into this hatred for passion. Right? She's becoming twisted by it. But think of you, sir. And the doctor says, I think she has a perturbed mind, which I cannot minister to, which reminds you of. Right. Isn't that strange? Alas, what then? The doctor says, understand you, she ever affected any man ere she beheld Palamon? The jailer says, I was once, sir, in great hope she had fixed her liking on this gentleman, the wooer, my good friend. And the wooer says, I did think so too, and would account I had a great pennyworth on it to give half my state, that both she and I at this present stood unfeignedly on the same terms. And the doctor gives some advice. That intemperate surfeit of her eye hath distempered the other senses. Meaning, she has looked too freely on Palamon, and she's lost her capacity to judge because of that. Her other senses may return and settle again to execute their preordained faculties, but they are now in a very extravagant vagary. This you must do. Here's the advice if your daughter goes off. Confine her to a place where the light may rather seem to steal in than be permitted. Take upon you, young sir, her friend. In other words, you take the role of her friend, the name of Palamon. Say you come to eat with her and to commune of love. This will catch her attention, for this her mind beats upon. Other objects that are inserted between her mind and eye become the pranks and friskins of her madness. Sing to her such green songs of love as she says Palamon hath sung in prison. Come to her, stuck in as sweet flowers as the season is mistress of, and thereto make an addition of some other compounded odors which are grateful to the sense. All this shall become Palamon, for Palamon can sing, and Palamon is sweet, and every good thing. Desire to eat with her, carve her, drink to her, and still among intermingle your petition of grace and acceptance into her favor. Learn what maids have been her companions and playfares, and let them repair to her with Palamon in their mouths, and appear with tokens as if they suggested for him. It is a falsehood she is in, which is with falsehoods to be combated. This may bring her to eat, to sleep, and reduce what's now out of square in her into their former law and regiment. King Lear, what do you do when they go mad? You go along with it, quiet them down, get them good clothes, give them a sleep, and they will come back to you. Remember? And this is what he advises. I have seen it approved, how many times I know not, but to make the number more, I have great hope in this. I will between the passages of this project come in with my appliance. Let us put it in execution and hasten the success, which doubt not will bring forth comfort. Play along with it. If she's thinking about Palamon, you be Palamon. Tell her girlfriends to come in and talk about Palamon. If she says Palamon sings, come in and sing Palamon's songs. Is it good advice if a person is mentally ill to go along with their illness? I think there's debate on the issue, actually. One thing you cannot do is argue with a person who's fixed insane. I mean, you cannot say, no, that's not true. I wish I knew more about what a professional psychiatrist would say about the advice he's giving here in terms of helping a person, stabilizing a person, and then moving in reality, accepting it. Yes, but he says the doctor here says unless we do this, you'll never hook into her mind. Now that's the only way to get her to pay attention to you, because that's all that she's thinking about. And if you can get her to look at you and think about you, then you'd have a way of gradually weaning her from her fixed idea of Palamon. You just kind of slowly, and if someone says this is happening and you know it isn't, you say, well, I know you think so, right? And you don't say, no, it's not going to happen, because their feeling will not give way to your certitude. The last of it has this happening, and this is the final section I want to look at from this play. The wooer has done what he's supposed to do. The doctor says to the wooer, this is Act 5, Scene 2, has this advice I told you done any good upon her? And the wooer says, oh, very much. The maid that kept her company have half persuaded her that I am Palamon. Within this half hour, she came smiling to me and asked me what I would eat, and when I would kiss her. I told her presently, and kissed her twice. Doctor says, that was well done. 20 times had been far better, for there the cure lies mainly. What does she really need? A lot of good romance. That's what she needs. Then she told me she would watch with me tonight, for well she knew what hour my fit would take me. She told him that she would sit with him because she's aware when he would become passionately aroused. Okay, she wants to be there. The doctor says, let her do so, and when your fit comes, fit her home, and presently. Great advice. The wooer says, she would have me sing. You did so? No. Doctor says, very ill done. You should observe her every way. But alas, sir, I have no voice, sir, to confirm her that way. That's all one, the doctor says. If you make a noise, if she thinks you're Palamon, it'll be beautiful to her, right? If she entreat again, do anything. Lie with her if she asks you. The jailer says, "Ho there, doctor." The doctor says, "Yes, in the way of cure." Well, that's interesting. In the way of cure. The jailer says, "But first, by your leave, in the way of honesty." And the doctor's answer, in other words, the father says, "I want you to, be honest with her, marry her." The doctor says, "That's but a niceness. Never cast your child away for honesty. Cure her first this way. Then if she will be honest, she has the path before her." The jailer says, "Thank you, doctor. Pray, bring her in. Let's see how she is." "I will, and tell her her Palamon stays for her. But doctor, methinks you are in the wrong still." The father doesn't go along with that. The doctor says, Go, you fathers are fine fools. Her honesty. And we should give her physic till we find that. Give her medicine until she finds her honesty." The wooer says, "Why, do you think she is not honest, sir?" The doctor says, "How old is she?" "She's 18. The doctor says, "She may be. That's all one. It is nothing to our purpose. Whatever her father says, if you perceive her mood inclining that way I spoke of, videlitet, the way of the flesh, You have me?" "Very well, sir." "Please her appetite. Do it home. It cures her, ipso facto, the melancholy humor that infects her." The wooer says, "I am of your mind, doctor." Listen to the... In comes the daughter, and we're almost done with this section. The doctor says, "Here she comes. Here comes Palamon's waiting for you." The daughter says, "I thank him for his gentle patience. He's a kind gentleman, and I am much bound to him. Did you never see the horse he gave me?" "Yes." "How do you like him?" "He's a very fair one." "You never saw him dance?" "No." "I have often. He dances very finely, very comely, and for a jig, come out and long-tail to him, he turns you like a top." "That's fine indeed." "He'll dance the Morris 20 miles an hour, and that will founder the best hobby horse, if I have any skill, in all the parish. And he gallops to the tune of Light o' Love." "What think you of this horse?" "Having these virtues, I think he might be brought to play at tennis." It's a great horse. "Alas, that's nothing. Can he read and write too?" "Oh, a very fair hand, and he casts himself the accounts of all his hay and provender. The hostler must rise betime that cozens him. You know the chestnut mare the Duke has?" "Very well." "She's horribly in love with him. Poor beast. But he is like his master, coy, scornful." "What dowry has she?" "Some 200 bottles and 20 strikes of oats. But he'll never have her. He lisps in his neighing, able to entice a miller's mare. He'll be the death of her." "Stuff," she utters. "But how do ye?" the wooer says. "That's a fine maid. There's a curtsy." "Yours to command, in the way of honesty. How far is it now to the end of the world, my masters?" "Why, a day's journey, wench." "Will you go with me?" "What shall we do there, wench?" "Why, play at stool ball. What else is there to do?" "I am content, if we shall keep our wedding there." "'Tis true, for there I will assure you we shall find some blind priest for the purpose that will venture to marry us. For here they are nice and foolish. Besides, my father must be hanged tomorrow, and that would be a blot in the business. Are you not Palamon?" "Do you not know me?" "Yes, but you care not for me. I have nothing but this poor petticoat and 2 coarse smocks." "That's all one. I will have you." "Will you surely?" "Yes, by this fair hand I will." "Will to bed, then?" "Whenever you will." "Oh, sir, you would fain be nibbling." He's kissing her. "You're nibbling me. Why do you rub my kiss off? 'Tis a sweet one, and will perfume me nicely against the wedding. Is not this your cousin, Arcite? Yes, sweetheart, and I'm glad my cousin Palamon has made so fair a choice. Do you think he'll have me? Yes, without a doubt. Do you think so too? Yes. We shall have many children. Lord, how ye are grown. My Palamon, I hope, will grow too finely, now he's at liberty. Alas, poor chicken, he was kept down with hard meat and ill lodging, but I'll kiss him up again. So they take her and heal her, according to the doctor's prescription. Physicians. That's the story of the jailer's daughter, which I think really is interesting and reads a lot better than I thought when I was reading it out loud for the first time now. Let's come back and look at the madness of Ophelia for a few minutes. Okay. Get into something a little more familiar. I probably should repeat what I said before. What we did last hour is not in the Knight's Tale by Chaucer. This was created apparently by Shakespeare, or more probably Fletcher, and put into the Two Noble Kinsmen. And so the main plot we barely referred to at all. That's the kind of set-in part. It doesn't surprise me at all that Fletcher might do this and recall all these memories of Ophelia, because I think he was doing that, and I think Shakespeare would have been honored to have the man he's working with create a subplot with some of this language. So if you have your Hamlets, let's kind of set some of the context for Ophelia's dilemma, if you would, by turning to Act 1, Scene 2. Hamlet has going to put on an antic disposition, right? And going to appear strange. He's doing it for a couple of reasons. The primary one is that he is infuriated with his mother's marriage to his stepfather. And it's easy when you talk about Hamlet to forget that he was already in a deep fit of depression before the ghost ever said anything about the murder of his father. All that is the final assurance that he's right in his anger, and it gives him the focus of revenge, which he must do, right? His father says, revenge my spirit. But that's not the problem. The problem is that Hamlet, who's had a girlfriend and apparently is capable of love, now sees love in the context of the incestuous, pig-like rutting that he imagines his mother and his stepfather as having. And Hamlet's language about physical relationships between men and women degenerates incredibly here. And I've been thinking more and more about the play since I've been teaching it and pondering. And I think there's something really working in me, at least, in terms of Hamlet's touchy mental stability being connected to the fact that he, before this experience, had raised romance and love to a high level and used it in his relationship with Ophelia, and then found romance and love in front of him in the context of Gertrude and Claudius, and he can't stand it. So that the same actions which confirm a romantic's idea of love are now confirming his idea of lust and incest and in now villainy, including murder, right? And watching his attack on Gertrude in her bedroom in the film again, which I think is a tour de force scene. I mean, Glenn Close is fantastic. You see the complex eroticism of that. He practically, even though he's attacking her, it's filmed as though he's raping her. I don't know if you noticed that. And I had my class turn down the sound and watch it without the speech. And if you have a copy of that, ask yourself what you are seeing. It is very, very shocking to see this happening. Try it if you have the Mel Gibson version. there are, in this play, several, yes. I think directors can choose how psychologically twisted and damaged Hamlet is. And I think this is one of the most powerful implications, that what's really motivating him is a terribly serious problem in his relationship to his mother. I don't want to go off on the movie too much, but Glenn Close effectively creates a very unusual manipulation of his psyche. She kisses him on the mouth 3 times, and I'm not talking pecks. When she's angry with him, the way she stops him is to kiss him on the forehead and then a full kiss on the mouth from his mother. And talk to teenagers about your mother kissing you like that, and they know right away there is something wrong with the way she has raised him. And Glenn Close makes it pretty convincing that Hamlet is dealing with a very, very insecure psyche vis-a-vis his relationship to his mother. Yes, the director tells you how much, and if you've seen the movie, have you all seen Mel Gibson's version? It's hardly Hamlet, okay? I mean, it is the most chopped up and reconstituted version. I mean, this is Spamlet. I mean, it's like at one time. And not only do they take speeches and cut out lines, and even famous speeches are gone from this movie. I mean, Something Rotten in the State of Denmark is not in that movie. It's unbelievable what he does. And he rearranges sequencing so that motivation changes because something happens after instead of before. Watch your Hamlet and notice where he puts to be or not to be, because he puts it after instead of before his encounter with Ophelia. I mean, radical changes. None. It's Glenn Close. Yeah. Well, if Hamlet is 30, which adds to, by the way, the difficulty of dealing with this psychological study, because there's a huge difference between being 20 and a college student and being 30 and a college student and coming home, and your relationship with your mother at 20 is not the same as it is at 30. No, I would say his mother could be 45. And a 45-year-old woman is not beyond being attractive, falling in love, marrying. Even a 50-year-old woman can do that. And if you're Glenn Close, and in fact, you can go way beyond that. You can go way beyond that. That was a joke. I'm 50. See, that's why I picked that. Yeah, it's an interesting problem. But see, if he were 45 and he were 30, 15 is not unduly young. And it would mean that he would be being raised by a very, very young mother. And there could be psychological consequences to that if she's not handling him maturely. You're getting me off into something I didn't want to talk about. But Hamlet set up against Claudius is interesting, because Claudius is a man. And Hamlet is 30, but he's not a man. Right? I mean, Claudius knows what he wants. He takes it. He takes the crown. He takes the queen. And you have this rivalry between the two men as well. And it's played by Alan Bates. I have to say, since we're talking about the movie, that I think it's a wonderful movie. I think it makes me so angry that they do so much damage to the play. But boy, as a film, it is first rate. I also know, and we know, that Shakespeare would have no problem with the director taking his text and chopping it up in pieces and putting it together. He worked for a company, and so his plays were not sacred texts. I mean, it's not like we're redoing the Old Testament. You know, I mean, this is a play script, and you can do things with it. So there's no problem there. But there's nothing left after. I mean, it's not the original play, which still is great. Would you like to go see a 5-hour version of Hamlet anyway? You know, 1.5 hours is long enough. If you have your text, let's turn to some comments on men and women first. And they're powerful. They set the scene powerfully. Act 1, Scene 3, and we're dealing with Laertes, who is Ophelia's brother. Okay, Laertes is getting ready to go to France, remember, and his father is going to give him all the great advice. But I don't want to look at Polonius' speech. I want to look at Laertes' comments to Ophelia. At the beginning of the scene, Act 1, Scene 3, Laertes says, "Let me hear from you." She says, do you doubt that? Of course I'll write to you. And then Laertes says, for Hamlet and the trifling of his favor, hold it a fashion and a toy in blood, a violet in the youth of primy nature, forward, not permanent, sweet, not lasting, the perfume and suppliance of a minute, no more. Brotherly advice. He's like an early flower, right? Don't confuse a violet with a rose bush. Roses are they're gonna be there and they're gonna last. And it's a moment. He's young. He's 30. He's young. There's nothing there. She says, no more but so. Now ponder if she's already slept with him, if she loves him, what this is going to do to her. Think it no more. For nature crescent does not grow alone in thews and bulk, but as this temple waxes, the inward service of the mind and soul grows wide withal. Crescent means nature growing. It isn't only in your muscles that you grow, right? I mean, your body gets bigger. I'm a lot bigger than I was when I was 14 or 13. And he says it's not only physically that Hamlet's going to grow, or a man is going to grow, but he's going to grow inside. And we're back to that kind of crucial question. How can you say at 20 you're going to love somebody when you're 50? I mean, you don't know where you're going to grow to 30 years later. And so he says, perhaps he loves you now. And now no soil nor caudle doth besmirch the virtue of his will. But you must fear his greatness weighed, his will not his own. For he himself is subject to his birth. He may not, as unvalued persons do, carve for himself. For on his choice depends the safety and health of this whole state. And therefore must his choice be circumscribed unto the voice and yielding of that body whereof he is the head. That's kind of practical advice, which is that he is the crown prince. He doesn't have the right just to walk around and say, I love you to any woman. He's got to marry according to the state. That was Charles's problem. Look what happened to him, right? You've got to find the right woman according to the state. Then, if he says he loves you, it fits your wisdom so far to believe it, as he in his particular act and place may give his saying deed, which is no further than the main voice of Denmark goes with all. So how far can Hamlet say to a woman, I am your man? As far as the main voice of Denmark. As far as his father says. Right? He may be 30, but he doesn't have his own hand. Then weigh what loss your honor may sustain. If with too credent ear you list his songs. Yes. What happens to these girls who sleep with Prince Andrew? Right? I mean, are they going to be soiled goods? Or lose your heart, or your chaste treasure open to his unmastered importunity? I mean, you're playing with fire if you go with this man. He can't give himself to you, and if you give too freely to him, you will not be a woman available for marriage. And this is a serious issue in the Middle Ages. Fear it, Ophelia. Fear it, my dear sister, and keep you in the rear of your affection, out of the shot and danger of desire. The chariest maid is prodigal enough if she unmask her beauty to the moon. Virtue itself escapes not calumnious strokes. The canker galls the infants of the spring too oft before their buttons be disclosed. And in the morn and liquid dew of youth, contagious blasphements are most imminent. Be wary then. Best safety lies in fear. Youth to itself rebels, for none is near. Well, this is good advice. In other words, be very careful. Ophelia says, I shall the effect of this good lesson keep as watchman to my heart. But good, my brother, do not as some ungracious pastors do, show me the steep and thorny way to heaven, while like a puffed and reckless libertine himself the primrose path of dalliance treads, and recks not his own reed. Ooh, sisters know how to do that, right? You're giving me this good advice, and you're going to Paris, right? You're going over to tread the primrose path of dalliance, which is also cut out of the play, out of the movie. You see, so don't worry about that, not at all. It's interesting advice, because her father is going to follow this advice, which is kind of loving brotherly advice, right? Be careful with his. Okay, now turn over to line 115. Let's see if I can find a good spot to start. I can make it line 90 something. Around line 90. So, what has he been talking to you about? And so Ophelia says to her dad, something touching the Lord Hamlet. And Polonius says, yeah. Mary, well bethought. I think it's a good idea that Laertes has talked to you. 'Tis told me he hath very oft of late given private time to you. And you yourself have of your audience been most free and bounteous. If it be so, as so it is put on me, and that in a way of caution, I must tell you, you do not understand yourself so clearly as it behooves my daughter and your honor. What is it between you? Give me up the truth. You hear the difference between brother and father? Fathers, especially Polonius, has this. He hath, my lord, of late made many tenders of his affection to me. Affection? Pooh! You speak like a green girl, unsifted in such perilous circumstances. Do you believe his tenders, as you call them? I do not know, my lord, what I should think. Mary, I will teach you. Think yourself a baby, that you have taken these tenders for true pay, which are not sterling. He doesn't know what's happened. We never have it actually said in words. But she's revealing some things about her relationship, isn't she? Hamlet has given her some tenders. We're going to play on the word tender. A tender is like a chit, right? It also has to deal with, first of all, as real cash, a chit IOU, but tender yourself more dearly, or, not to crack the wind of the poor phrase, running it thus, you'll tender me a fool. What's Polonius interested in? Is his reputation and your honor. Be a little less free of your time, or I will be seen as a fool. No man wants to be a fool. No man wants to be a cuckold, or the father of a girl who just walks around privately with people like Hamlet. If he's 30 years old, is this a lot more serious? Yes. I mean, a 30-year-old man is not going to be a chaste innocent. And if she is 15, 17, is there a reason for fatherly worry? Is it possible for an innocent girl, 18, like the jailer's daughter, to fall in love with a 30-year-old handsome heir to the throne and listen when he says, I love you? Oh. Ophelia stands up for herself. These scenes are really interesting to me, and I feel guilty that I'm not doing Hamlet with you, but she needs some focus. My lord, he hath importuned me with love in honorable fashion. Aye, fashion you may call it. Go to. What's he not allowing? Fashion. She says he hath tendered me, by indications of his love. He hath honored me. He has spoken to me in an honorable fashion. Fashion. What's Father doing? Playing word games. Notice that? Tender? Fashion? All right. We're talking about men. He hath given countenance to his speech, my lord. Meaning, he has supported his words with almost all the holy vows of heaven. Aye, springes to catch woodcocks. A springe is a trap to catch birds. It's a wire trap, and the birds land on it or come near it to pick up the food and whack. What are holy vows where it comes to men and girls? Of course I'll love you in the morning, right? I promise. And does the father know what men are like? That you get this really interesting. She is this innocent who wants to believe in love. Right? I mean, Hamlet's a great guy. And here's the father, the brother first, and then the father saying, you can't trust them as far as you can throw them. Right? I had Emily's Tolo picture, and I was showing my students, Who's her boyfriend? Oh, he's this guy that he goes with, this jerk, and say, oh, you don't like him? I says, well, she's dating him, so he's a jerk, isn't he? I'm the father, he's the jerk. That's the rule. Well, here's the father doing this thing, right? Even if he's the prince. Look, I do know when the blood burns, how prodigal the soul lends the tongue vows. I don't know, if we don't have the best Shakespeare in Two Noble Kinsmen, we do have the best Shakespeare in Hamlet. Wonderful poetry. Isn't it easy when the soul burns for those words? These blazes, daughter, giving more light than heat, extinct in both, even in their promise, as it is a making, you must not take for fire. From this time be something scanter of your maiden presence. Set your entreatments at a higher rate than a command to parley. This is going to cause problems because he is going to order her not to interact. Set your entreatments at a higher rate than a command to parley. Don't walk over there to see him just because what? Because he snaps his fingers. That's right? Just because somebody says, let's parley, you don't do it. You don't just run to the telephone. Once in a while, be a little distant. Test him out. For Lord Hamlet, believe so much in him that he is young, and with a larger tether may he walk than may be given you. Oh, what's the problem? Boys, they've got a long rein, don't they? Long rope. Girls, no, you can stick close to home. In few, Ophelia, do not believe his vows, for they are brokers, not of that dye which their investments show, pious bawds, the better to beguile. This is for all. I would not, in plain terms, from this time forth, have you slander any moment leisure as to give words or talk with the Lord Hamlet. Look to it, I charge you. Come, your ways. I shall obey, my lord. Their not talking is going to be a major reason for her insanity, because Hamlet is never going to have a chance to, she's never going to have a chance to hear Hamlet speak seriously if he would or not. Okay, let's turn over to another encounter and see what we come up with. Act 2, Scene 1. We get an indication off stage. This is actually done in the movie. You see Hamlet doing it. In the play, we get language describing it. Something has happened. We're about line 70. Fair Polonius says goodbye to Rinaldo, and Ophelia comes in and she's very upset. How now, Ophelia? What's the matter? My lord, I've been so affrighted. With what, in the name of God? My lord, as I was sewing in my closet, Lord Hamlet, with his doublet all unbraced, no hat upon his head, his stockings fouled, ungartered, down-jived to his ankle, pale as his shirt, his knees knocking together, and with a look so piteous, in purport as if he had been loosed out of hell, to speak of horrors, he comes before me. What's the problem? First thing, the description of it. Hamlet is not the kind of guy to walk around with his socks hanging down around his ankles, right? His doublet is unstrung, his socks are hanging down, his face is pale, out of nowhere, all right? She's just sitting there quietly. Hamlet's bringing his madness, north by northwest, into her sewing closet. Polonius says, mad for thy love. They've already decided what Hamlet's problem is, remember? The king and the queen and Polonius. Ophelia says, my lord, I do not know, but truly I do fear it. She is going to be taken in as well, isn't she? Because she doesn't know what's causing this. Hamlet's playing a game, and they're telling her he's fallen head over heels. What said he? And look what Hamlet does for her, and I kind of want to see it from her point of view. Out of nowhere, this serious man who's given her love tokens comes in, and he does this. He took me by the wrist, held me hard. Then he goes to the length of all his arm, and with his other hand thus o'er his brow, he falls to such perusal of my face as he would draw it. Long stayed he so. At last, a little shaking of mine arm, and thrice his head waving up and down, he raised a sigh so piteous and profound as it did seem to shatter all his bulk and end his being. That done, he lets me go, and with his head over his shoulder turned, seemed to find his way without his eyes. For out of doors he went, without their helps, and to the last bended their light on me. Very melodramatic description, isn't it? And Mel Gibson does a pretty good job of this. But notice what he does. He grabs her arm, puts his hand, and stares at her. He says he stares at her as though he was going to draw her. And then he raises a sigh. Thrice his head waving up and down, he waves a sigh, so piteous and profound as it did seem to shatter all his bulk and end his being. She sees him looking at her, examining her, and then he goes, what would you do if someone did that to you? I mean, after staring at you as if he was going to draw her, she says it's like everything was over. What would cause you to look in someone's face and then have this? Hamlet's acting, of course, but she doesn't know this. Yes. Yes. But what's the shaking of the head saying to her? She's looking at him, and he goes, it's sort of like Norma Desmond, but nonetheless, what is he seeing? What does she think he's seeing? Yeah. Or whatever you did in the year 1200. I wonder if it would look to her as though he's seen into her soul. And what he sees he doesn't like. And he rejects her. And he nods his head like I suspected underneath that beauty. If you look close enough, there it is. Original sin, right? Underneath that beauty is a woman who's willing to. He's looking deeply into her soul. And she doesn't know what to do about it. No. I'm trying to find out why she reacts so strongly to what he's going to do to her shortly. She has seen him do this, and she doesn't know what it is. She has to react in some way that. Yes. Oh yes, and they're grabbing at straws. Yes. Well, he is feigning it even here. The question, I guess what I was trying to get at is there are two things. There's one, what Hamlet's doing, which is playing an act, right? So that she goes back and says, oh, Dad, this is what happened. But the question for me today is, why does Ophelia go crazy? What happens to her that breaks her soul? And I was pondering these scenes. I saw this scene, and having seen Mel Gibson do it, what would you do if someone grabbed you hard by the hand, stared in your face, and then nodded like, yeah, I see what I thought I would see. And then, she's not what I thought she was. If they've slept together, she's soiled. Right? And we know what is in his mind about his mother and his stepfather. I think there's some evidence in here. I'm not sure. Don't take anything I say today as gospel at all. It's a hypothesis. Look what happens. Let's pursue it. Let's pursue it and see what comes with it. Act 2, Scene 2. Act 3, Scene 1. And we'll see the next. Now we have it in fact. And this is the great scene right after To Be or Not to Be. Okay? Where he comes upon her. The last lines of that great speech are, soft you now, the fair Ophelia. And then he speaks to her, Nymph, in thy orisons be all my sins remembered. So we've just heard of an encounter off stage, and now we're going to see what he does with our own eyes. And this is a very difficult scene to watch, right? He really attacks her. What has he been pondering in To Be or Not to Be? All right, should I kill myself or not? If I knew that it was just sleep, I'd do it. But gosh, who knows what dreams may come, right? It may be endless nightmares, and I'm a coward because I don't want to go to endless nightmares. Ophelia walks in and sees him. Good, my lord, how does your honor for this many a day? I humbly thank you. Well, my lord, I have remembrances of yours that I have longed to redeliver. I pray you now, receive them. What's going on with her? Her father says, don't take anything from him, give him back all of his keepsakes or souvenirs. But she's serious about this, right? She's saying, you have changed. I'm going to give you back everything you gave me. What does she expect? If when boyfriends and girlfriends break up, you give back the little trinkets and things. What does she expect in response? I want you to keep them, right? No, I love you. Or you're wrong. I'm distracted by my mother, or whatever. She's expecting some kind of affirmation that they, yes, did in fact have a relationship, right? Something was going on there. Look at, no, not I. I never gave you naught. I never gave you aught. I never gave you anything. That's the one thing you would never expect. She's holding them out to her, right? The photographs, a brooch, maybe a nice necklace, Well, what have I got in my hands here, you dope? He denies. He denies it. My honored lord, you know right well you did. And with them words of so sweet breath composed as to make the things more rich. Their perfume lost, take these again. For to the noble mind rich gifts wax poor when givers prove unkind. There, my lord. Are you honest? My lord. How does he react? She's given this beautiful speech, right? You gave them to me with words that were so beautiful. He laughs in her face, right? He says, are you honest? Honest means more than just you not tell lies, right? Honest has to do with, are you a virtuous woman? My lord? Are you fair? What means your lordship? What does that reaction, that line tell you about how she's reacting to those? Are you honest? Are you fair? What means it says, oh, what? What means your lordship? The actress should do what when he does that? And what's going on in her head when she says, what do you mean? She's under attack, right? Well, what's happening here? I'm losing control. It's interesting that when he goes to see Gertrude says, Hamlet, I've got a few things to talk to you. You have your father much offended. And Gertrude thinks who's in control of this conversation. Oh boy, mother, thou hast my father much offended. And you see how he's doing the same thing here? Ophelia thinks she's in control. I'm going to talk to him about presents he gave me. He said he loved me, and maybe he'll tell me he really does love me, right? No, babe, you're not controlling this. And so she sets back like, oh, hey, what means your lordship? That if you be honest and fair, your honesty should admit no discourse to your beauty. Could beauty, my lord, have better commerce than with honesty? Aye, truly. For the power of beauty will sooner transform honesty from what it is to a bawd than the force of honesty can translate beauty into his likeness. This was sometimes a paradox, but now the time...